Hello. Hi. Hey, Amber. So are you opening or is Chloe opening? Chloe's opening. That's what I thought. Okay, so let's switch to her. Are you ready, Chloe?
Yeah. Yeah, is my audio working okay?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. Begin by closing the eyes and getting comfortable. Drop the shoulders and make any micro adjustments you need to before finding stillness as we begin to focus inward. Start to deepen the breath, inhaling and exhaling through your nose. Focus on how the breath feels to you. You might feel it mostly in the nostrils or maybe the throat. Just notice which sensations you find the most sensation. With each breath, feel the inhale energizing every cell in your system, focusing on letting go of any tension by breathing into areas of discomfort or tightness. Put all your to-do lists to the back of your mind for now, and know that you're exactly where you need to be at this moment in time. Remember to keep your focus on the breath, flowing in and out the body through the nose. On each inhale, imagine the rich life force filling your body with light and compassion. On the exhale, imagine the breath taking with it any worries or stresses you may have been holding on to. Now slowly bring your awareness back to the breath, breathing in and out. Slowly begin to reconnect with the body once more by gently wriggling fingers and toes, or slowly doing whatever feels good to you to bring you awareness back to the present moment. Now when you're ready, gently blink the eyes open. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much. Wow, you had so many good, lovely cues in there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, don't be afraid to slow it down because it was so, I mean, I know it's hard. It's like 3 minutes, but I really loved so much you said. It was really great. Thank you, Chloe. Where are you from?
I'm from Yorkshire. That's why I was a bit dubious as to like if anyone would understand me properly.
No. We completely understood you. I completely understood you.
Not good.
Yeah, no, you had such great cueing. Yeah, and about the cells and everything. Yeah, really, really, really nice. So as you keep practicing, just slow everything down. And I think it's, like so lovely. Yeah, really nice. So welcome everyone to Wednesday. So there's what we're going over today. I feel like we've talked about a lot of it. So I'm hoping we can look at poses and then do some practice teaching in pairs again to get everyone using their voice more. So we watched for today B.5.6, which is about the diaphragms within the body. Guys, if you have questions about any of this material, put the questions in the chat. And then the other big piece was about the cardiovascular system and inversions. And then we also do today was the Tantra, Nadi, and the Gunas lecture. And then we're going to look at Sirsasana, Halasana, and Sarvangasana, and then hopefully do some practice teaching. So Amber, do you want to give your 3 takeaways, and then Chloe can give hers, and then I can, go over just the key things I wanted to, and then we can hop into pose photos.
Okay. Hello.
And where are you from, Amber?
I live in the Yukon, Canada.
North, awesome. North, up. Okay, awesome.
So I absolutely love this lecture about tantras, nadis, and gunas. There's like so many awesome things in it. But to just kind of give a few, from no things are all born. So it's just like really easy to relate to such a universal, huge thing if you think about how we can relate to no things within so many things, everything we do. Brahman, the universal intelligence, Atman, the individual intelligence that has karma attached to it. We have three main nadis. We've got many, many nadis, but three main nadis in our body is the Sushumna nadi, the Ida, and the Pingala nadi. And three gunas are all matter. Everything, even a cell, has a proton, a neutron, and an electron. That's already more than three. But one more is when your head is below your heart, your veins don't have to work as hard to bring the deoxygenated blood from the lower half of the body to the heart and the lungs. So that's why inversions are really good for our system.
Awesome. Those are great. Yay. I'm glad you liked this lecture. And yeah, I really love it too. Let's hear Chloe's, and then I'm going to add on some stuff.
Is this the takeaways just from the lecture?
Yeah, just, or the material as a whole, like everything that was due today.
Oh, right, okay.
Anything you thought was like the top things that we should remember?
Right, I've got quite a few. Further there. Yeah, the first one is that over time inversions could lower the blood pressure. Like, I didn't realize that until, you know, obviously it makes sense. And the difference between the arteries and the veins, like, I've never, obviously I know arteries and veins are different, but I never really thought about the differences, whereas like the arteries have got the smooth muscular walls that help with contraction, the blood around the body, whereas the veins are sort of elastic, kind of like a pair of tights, if you like. Oh, and the last one that I thought was very, very interesting was about the diaphragms in the body, and that our brain moves, even though it's like very subtle movement, that it moves within our breath. Like, I didn't even have any idea about that prior to this. Yeah, that's about it. I've got a massive list of things, but
yeah, no, those are all good. Awesome. Okay, so let's start at those are great takeaways, you guys. Really great job. Let's start with the diaphragms in the body, the one that you were talking about. Yes. And have you ever, I don't know if any of you, if you've had kids, like little babies, you can actually see the movement. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Like at the top? Yeah. And it's so cool. And I tried to film it when Alex was really little. He still has it. Yeah. The Fontanelle. But it just doesn't show well on camera. Because even last class, I was like so excited because I had been teaching this material for a while, but once I had a baby, I really saw it firsthand and how real it is. So yeah, so just if you're around a baby, stare at their head and you can see this firsthand. Very fun. So for the cardiovascular system, let's just review why the heart rate slows down in inversions. So usually your heart needs to pump oxygen to your hungry brain, right? In order to tell your body to pick up this cup of tea or really to do anything, right? So when we reverse this by being upside down, and the heart's no longer working against gravity to send oxygen up to the brain, right? Because the heart is now above the head, right? So we've reversed that flow. So the heart doesn't have to work as hard because gravity is now working in its favor in order to send oxygen to the brain. Make sense? So technically the heart rate should slow down, but there's an exception to this, which I think we kind of covered in a prior call, which is that if a student doesn't feel safe being inverted, doesn't feel safe being upside down, the heart rate is not going to slow down, right? Their heart rate's going to speed up because they're going to be afraid of potentially falling, or a lot of people have fear of being upside down, myself included, right? Even sometimes for me, like the first couple breaths in a headstand, my heart rate's speeding up until I'm like, oh, okay, I feel balanced, I feel calibrated and whatnot. And then the other reason is exactly, I think, what either Amber or Chloe or both of them said, is that your veins don't have to work as hard to bring deoxygenated blood back up to the heart, right? So you can think of like anytime, a lot of different diseases, like even my father, who's very sick right now, very common is what? The legs swell, right? Blood tends to pool in the lower body. And similar happens with pregnancy as well, just because there's more blood volume. And pregnant women often have like swollen ankles and things like that. I know I did. So what would be a great pose to like a very simple, safe inversion for everyone that could help bring help this venous blood return back to the heart. Does anyone have ideas? Yeah, legs up the wall. Does anyone remember the Sanskrit name for this pose? Sarvangasana, nope, that's Viparita Karani. Yep, Viparita Karani, legs up the wall. And Andrea says, I think if you do inversions over a period of time, it resets the regulators that control the blood pressure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think like resets in quotes. Yeah, I think your body gets more and more used to it over time. It was interesting. Like I haven't gone in my yoga trapeze for a really long time, and I went in it the other day, and it was interesting. Like I wasn't as used to being upside down, and I felt like the blood rushing to my head. So again, it's really like if you're only doing headstand or going upside down in an inversion table or yoga trapeze occasionally, you know, some of these benefits aren't going to be as apparent. Lauren, is this okay for people with high blood pressure? Not so much, right? Not so much. Again, it could help with high blood pressure because this is the kind of thing we want them to do. But if someone tells you they have blood pressure issues, I wouldn't be like, let's go into a headstand. I'd say like Viparita Karani would be great. Legs up the wall would be good. What are some other inversions that aren't headstand or handstand besides Viparita Karani, which we've talked about? Yeah, any forward fold. I really think of the wide-legged forward fold. So that would be a good way to test. Like someone just asked about someone who's had a stroke. So again, if they're immediately post-stroke, right? We want to keep it really gentle. But if this is something like back in their medical history, high blood pressure or stroke, a good way that you could test out the whole concept of whether inversions will be appropriate for your student or not is to have them just do a forward fold, right? Or even a sun salute. And this is the next big takeaway from this material that I'd encourage you guys to write down or really remember in your teaching, is that we always want to come out of inversion slowly to allow the blood pressure in the body to recalibrate. So that means that not just a headstand we want to come out of slowly, but for example, I think of the best example I think of when trying to illustrate this concept is that if we have our whole class in a wide-legged forward fold, prasarita, we don't say inhale, come on up, right? We say inhale, come up halfway, hands on hips, right? Exhale, and then take a deep breath in and come up the rest of the way. So we kind of break it into two parts. So have you ever, put yes in the chat if you've ever like gotten on your mat and not even the wide-legged forward fold, but you've just done like a sun salute and you've suddenly got kind of lightheaded. That's what some of your students might be experiencing a lot of the time. If they're new to yoga, if they have high blood pressure, if they're pregnant, right? So for all those folks, you just want to tell them the modification would be to just come down halfway. So if doing a sun salute and coming all the way into full uttanasana is a little bit much for them, you're just going to say, take your hands on your hips and just come down halfway. So that always keep the crown of head kind of parallel to the tailbone instead of folding all the way forward. Does that make sense? So again, I feel like it's really hard to make generalizations about people who've had a stroke or people who've had high blood pressure or who have high blood pressure, because every body's so different. And it's like, did they have the stroke 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago? So the best way I think to kind of begin playing with all of this is like legs up the wall. I think it's great for someone who has high blood pressure, has had a stroke. It's really restorative. It's really just great. I mean, I basically put pillows under my dad's legs in his hospital bed and like do, you know, it's like a little legs up the wall. But anything where you can get the legs higher than the heart is going to be super, hopefully relaxing and encourage that venous blood return. So we're going to get some of the positive effects of this. And then, you know, start just seeing how your student reacts. Like you could do a wide-legged forward fold, or you could do a little sun breath and, you know, say, hey, do you feel lightheaded or not? So a happy baby, yeah, it's like a little bit, but it's not so much like, because the knees are bent, it's not as much as a venous blood return situation as the Viparita Karani would be. You can also do, if you don't want to move your whole class to the wall for Viparita Karani, you can always just have them do it with a block under the sacrum in the center of the room. It's not as relaxing because they kind of have to hold their legs there, but it's nice. Another Viparita Karani question, which isn't even in today's material, but now we're talking about it, is some people think like, oh, well, it's not a real inversion because the heart's not really over the head unless you put a big bolster or pillow underneath the low back. So again, if you can put a bolster or pillow under the low back so that you kind of get the hips higher than the shoulders, right? That's wonderful. But again, just if someone's lying flat, just having the legs up is really beneficial too. So you could choose, depending how much time you have to teach it, you could have everyone roll up a blanket, or again, put a bolster or something underneath the sacrum while they do Viparita Karani, and it'll make it even more of an inversion. We'll get even more of these anatomical benefits of an inversion. And I think that was actually Muriel's question. We were having a moment. Okay, yes, she's doing thumbs up. Okay. All right, so the biggest takeaway from all of this is I would say take people out of inversion slowly, and forward folds are an inversion. When people are doing headstand or handstand, we always ask them to come into child's pose after and take 5 deep breaths. Because a lot of times people don't realize that their blood pressure hasn't quite recalibrated. So they may spring up and then they're like kind of unstable. So again, even in my own practice, I force myself anytime I go upside down, stop, 5 deep breaths, or even if I'm getting off my yoga trapeze, I've been upside down for a long time. I sit in the swing, I don't move for at least 5 deep breaths instead of like jumping off the swing right away. So just take care of yourself and your students in that way. Be very mindful. So if you remember one thing, that would be the thing I think to remember. Come out of these inversions really slowly and find that flat back in the situations where it makes sense, and do a full cycle of breath in the flat back before coming all the way up. Cool. All right. For Tantra, Nadis, and the Gunas, I thought one thing I like to review is why are the Gunas, when we talk about the Gunas, to understand them best, what are we talking about the Gunas in relationship to with a lot of this Vedic philosophy? Because if you just think about the Gunas by themselves, I think sometimes it's confusing, but if you think of them in relationship to, Rachel says, finding balance between them. The chakras, says Muriel. Yeah, that was kind of what I was looking for, right? So think about the gunas in relationship with the chakras, right? So, which we haven't gone into detail on the chakras yet, but we will later in the course. But like a rajastic throat chakra would be like someone who can't stop talking, right? They're constantly chattering. Maybe they're like a gossip, or they just love the sound of their own voice, right? A tamastic throat chakra would be like the person who literally has the arms crossed in front of the chest, chin into chest, like doesn't speak up a lot, right? And then sattva is that balanced state where it's like we're speaking our truth, we're standing up for ourselves, we're communicating clearly. So if you ever get confused about the gunas, I think it's just helpful to bring them back into the context of the chakras. But really, you can think of them as governing everything. So for example, like a tree in the winter is more tamastic, right? Because maybe it has icicles around the branches and there's no green leaves, right? And in the summer, everything's in bloom, you know, it's oranges, flowers, everything in this tree, right? So that would be the tree in a more rajastic state, okay? And then the biggest thing to remember is that when we cultivate sattva guna, right, sort of this neutrality, that's the state in which we're able to move through our karma the most efficiently and with the most grace. Yeah. So if I'm really dumbing it down, but like just for like to keep it basic and understand, like if I'm a crazy chatterbox and can't stop talking and, you know, gossiping all over the place, I'm not going to move through my karma, regardless of what it is, probably as efficiently as if I were in sattva guna. And same thing with the reverse, right? Does that make sense? Okay. And then a quick note on nadis. anytime you're feeling sensation in the body or something feels challenging, like whether it's a physical asana, or maybe you're doing something more Kundalini-esque, like holding your arms overhead and the breath of fire or something like that. Anytime you feel sensation in the body, you can tell yourself and you can tell your students that sensation is really most likely energy channels opening. Yeah? So that's a really nice way to reframe physical discomfort for people, right? Sensation in the body is new energy channels opening, new and old neural pathways being replaced with new neural pathways, right? So again, I think of that most likely in the context of like someone has their arms above their head and it's uncomfortable, or maybe even sitting in a chair for a long period of time, right? So that can be like a helpful thing to bring into your teaching and also to know for yourself, right? Anytime we feel that extreme sensation, it means change is happening and new neural pathways are developing. It's like you're strengthening your nervous system in a brand new way. And you can literally think of it as new nadis, energy channels, kind of like opening and flooding with light. And we focused in the lecture, and we're going to focus now throughout the rest of the course on the three main ones that Amber said: Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna Nadi. But again, I think a lot of people, we get really focused on those three, but keep in mind, there are thousands of nadis, right, throughout the whole body. So when we hold our arms above our head like this, it's stimulating nadis and energy channels specifically in this area, which lead into the energy center of the heart and help balance and open the heart chakra, right? So we're going to focus on those three, but just know that there's so many. There's thousands in the palms. Guess where else there's a lot of them, right? Below the navel, in and around the psoas, all these areas that we've been kind of like hot spots that we've also talked about throughout the training. Okay. Rachel says she feels like she understands a little more now. Okay, awesome. All right, so you guys can also talk a little bit about this lecture when I put you in pairs, if you like. But I think like one of the key things that Amber pointed out about Brahman and Atman, that's maybe one of the easiest concepts to grasp and that you could pull into your teaching really right away, right? That the source energy or universal consciousness is an ocean and we are a drop, right? So we're made up of the same stuff. I feel like that's really empowering and a lot of people can kind of grasp onto that idea. Okay, Rachel, do nadis exist in the physical body, energetic body, or are they like the chakras where they kind of bridge both? So they're in the energetic body. Yeah. So if we dissect someone, we're not going to see them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and the sort of tradition of nadis in the kind of like Hindu Indian lineage and the Chinese medicine system and how they kind of map or don't map in the chakra lecture later. So we're going to go deeper into that. But yes, if we dissected me right now, we're not going to find like a nadi that we can pull out and look at, if that answers the question. So Sibel says, are they more like chakras or are they highways? So think of them as like highways or roads. I'd say they're like roads through which energy travels. So again, we're going to talk more about this in the chakra lecture. So Sibel, don't worry, because there's a lot of material about this coming up. But I'd think of Sushumna nadis like the super highway. So everyone where they live, you probably have like, what's the interstate that you have to get on to go anywhere, right? Like the big highway, right? You can't go to 3 towns over without getting on it, right? So in LA, it would be like the 405. That I would think of as Sushumna nadi, right? And that's where the chakras are, which again, think of them as like hubs. Again, I'm going to make really silly examples, but this is just to try to help you understand it at the simplest level. So, you know, when you're on the highway and sometimes they have, like you're going on the highway and there's nothing on like a long road trip for a really long time. And then all of a sudden there's an exit and there's a gas station and there's a Wendy's and there's like 6 fast food restaurants and 6 motels, right? And you're like, okay, this is a hub. And then you keep going and there's nothing for like another 50 miles, right? So think of that hub as a chakra, right? And then there's 7 from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. And it makes perfect sense that if there was like a huge traffic jam in one of those areas, that the energy would potentially be blocked from being able to continue on the highway. Does that make sense? And then you can think of all the other nadis. Again, this is like vast simplification, but I'm just trying to keep it simple. Just think of them as like all the roads in the towns, right? So maybe like here and here, these are kind of hot points. So's the psoas, so's the palm. So maybe those are like towns. And then all the little nadis between those places are more like the rural roads, right? So again, I feel like I'm kind of like really dumbing it down, but I think for me, it's helpful to like have a visual, even if the visual is silly, to understand some of these concepts that are more esoteric. Okay, awesome. So people are saying it's a little easier to picture now. Okay, awesome. And we actually are gonna dive into this so much more later. So I don't want to get too sidetracked. Okay. So let's look at some poses. So, and if people have more questions, put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to switch my screen to over here so we can check out some of the inversions that we had for today. So we've already gone over what the safer inversions are for our beginners and for our people who have stroke, high blood pressure, injury, all these things, right? So it's not like we have to teach everyone headstand. In fact, I would really recommend not to teach headstand to someone who's new to yoga, right? But why don't we start with it? And so who wants to go first? Amber, Chloe, do you want to walk us through someone you wanted to look at in headstand Sirsasana? Amber's nodding. Okay. So it looks like you had someone in this folder, so let's unmute you. I just unmuted you. Okay, cool. So who did you want to look at? And hopefully it's...
I had a couple, but the first one I'd say is Laura Lane.
Okay, who I think is also on this call. Or at least I thought I saw her. Okay, cool. Looks like she has really awesome pants on. Yay! Okay, so I'm not sharing my screen. Let me make that happen. Okay, so Lauren's in your class and you're looking at her body, and what is coming to mind for you?
Well, other than her awesome pants, I would say the first thing that stuck out to me was I actually think she should get away from the wall, because I feel like she's trying to find the wall with her feet and not just relying on her strength, which she obviously has because she's not against the wall at all. So instead of being beside the wall, I'd say come away from the wall so she's not tempted to touch the wall with her feet, and just strengthen up her legs, bring her legs together, and she's got it, basically.
So it looks like her legs are just a little bit behind her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing a lot of people need in their headstand, remember the whole conversation that it's like, Brett, shut up, you talk about this so much, so I apologize. But remember when we talk about knitting the front ribs together? That's going to really help people in their headstand, as is telling them to squeeze the inner thighs together and squeeze the ankles together. Now, I think I like teaching, so whether to teach headstand or not with the wall is debated in the yoga community, right? So if you force people to do it in the center of the room, they have less of a safety net. But I think you're kind of on the right track. If she moves a little bit farther away from the wall, one thing she could do, and this is really nice to do in your headstand practice, instead of having her heels touch the wall, because right now if she falls, her heels are going to touch the wall, and then she's going to kind of be in a banana shape. Sorry, this is not eloquent or not pretty, but you get what I'm saying? So instead, something that you can play with in your personal practice and teach to your students is if she was a little bit farther away from the wall, she could kind of bend at the knee and take her sole of foot to the wall. So it would be like her sole of foot is here, her knee would be like here, and then her body would come down. Can you guys visualize this? So it's like she just bends at the knee and she finds the wall, but pushing off of it instead of like more with her sole of foot. So her knee would stay aligned over her body. as opposed to letting her heels touch the wall, in which she comes into a banana shape, which really, it looks like her low back is in a totally neutral, awesome place right now. But if her heels came all the way to the wall, especially if she was farther away, you made her move farther away, her low back could be taking a hit, right? So can people visualize what I'm talking about right here, where you'd bend the knee? Can you see me? Can you guys see me on the screen, like in the bottom corner somewhere, what I'm doing with my hand? Yes. Okay. So for someone who is very strong in her headstand, I would suggest that as her next. So sorry, this is the knee, this is the wall. Yeah. So play with that. If you're someone who likes doing headstand against the wall, say, okay, I'm gonna back off the wall a little bit more than I'm maybe comfortable with. I know it's there, but I'll just flex the knee and find the wall instead of letting the heels hit. Okay, so that will be really nice for her to play with. Who else did you want to look at in here, Amber?
Ali B, or is it Ali U?
Ali U. Okay, awesome.
So first, I think she should have her fingers folded together, like clasped hands, or else lay the palms flat down, because it will be a stronger base for her. And it looks like she's doing like the dolphin or prep for headstand, and I think she just needs a little bit more stability there. And if she had more stability, I feel like she could creep her toes a little bit more forward and find more length in the spine.
Ooh, yeah, key word, lengthen the spine. Okay, so awesome. So if the modification for headstand, so say you're teaching the level 2-3 class and you do want to teach headstand, you can give everyone the option to do, I would always give people the option to do dolphin or headstand, right? So dolphin is also sometimes called headstand prep. So for Ali, like if she can interlace the hands, we want her to interlace. And then can you guys still see me on the screen? Remember, you want to cue people to take that little pinky finger underneath, inside the fist. Maybe I'll stop the share for a second just so people can see this, right? So you're going to cue people to make it, and then the pinky finger, you need to cue them to bring it in, right? Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of weight on that pinky finger out, right? So you can dig in it. But if they can't interlace the hands, then just stay in dolphin, right? So for Ali, instead of her being kind of halfway, let's have her in dolphin, or let's have her in the headstand prep position with, again, if we can do headstand prep, we want the heels of the hands touching best we can. And then another common misalignment that we see in this posture is that the elbows splay way out. So you guys can just, everyone make this shape right now with me, interlace the hands, take the pinky in, and match me. So your elbows are right in front of your shoulders, and like glide the shoulder blades down and back, and imagine you're pressing into the floor with your forearms. How strong do you feel here? Take a mental note. All right, now you're gonna take the elbows wide, take them wider, wider, wider to around here. And imagine you're pressing into the floor here. How much strength do you feel? More or less? Less, right? So when we have a super wide base, when the elbows aren't under the shoulders, you don't have as stable a base for your headstand. So a common misalignment you see so much is that people flare the elbows much wider than they should be. So that's something you're going to want to cue a lot when they set up. Hold on, I'm seeing a lot of chat messes. So, okay, perfect. Yeah. So even in Lauren's picture that we saw, which was super strong, she could have had the elbows closer together, right? So that's just something to be mindful of. Okay, so let's go back to Ali. Her elbows, I think, look pretty good, right? She has a nice strong base. And then when you're looking at people's dolphin, you're just gonna put on your down dog sunglasses. You're just gonna remember everything that you learned about down dog, because down dog and dolphin are basically all the same alignment, except that the forearms happen to be on the ground. Kind of like Sphinx is the exact same alignment as Cobra, except that the elbows and forearms happen to be on the ground. So if we think of dolphin as down dog and we want length in the spine, what would we tell Ali to do if she were our student to help her find length in the spine here?
Bend the knees.
Bend the knees. Bend the knees and walk. Maybe once she bends the knees, she can walk, tiptoe the feet in. So it becomes this game of in her dolphin. Bend the knees. Can you tiptoe your feet in? Send that booty, that sitting bones high up to the ceiling. Think of pressing the chest towards the thigh bones, right? So she might end up being in like a very crouching position with the knees very close to the mat. But guess what? That's really going to help her find length in the spine. And more importantly, it's going to have congruency, help her find congruency between the humerus and the shoulder joint. And it's going to actually really help her strengthen to eventually come up into headstand. So for someone who's in dolphin prep, we want that length in the spine that we'd see in down dog. And then they're going to walk their feet closer, 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 closer over time so that eventually the seat stacks above the head and she can come into that little fetal position upside down. Kind of with us. So if someone can't come into that little fetal position upside down, meaning that, there's a photo of me in it in the manual, right? Where your knees are just tucked in and you're in this position. Should they be coming into headstand? Yes or no? No, right? Because if they can't find that position, it means they don't have the strength to hold themselves there. Amber, I'm just muting you because I think there's a little background noise. So do we allow ourselves or our students to kick up into headstand? Yes or no? No, right? No. Why? Because maybe I'm just being a stickler about this. What do you guys think? Heather says the neck, right? The neck, the cervical spine is hugely compromised in headstand. And if we kick up, it's scary, scary, scary. Another, okay, so Chloe, did you have anyone you wanted to look at in that headstand folder? If you didn't, that's fine, because I think Amber had one more.
Yeah, I had Jessica P.
Okay, let's look at that one, because there's a couple other key points I want to make sure we cover about headstand, and maybe it will come up as we go. Oh, another just real quick, in dolphin, Allie could take this block if she wanted, and she could put it between her hands like this in her dolphin with the block. Where's my block? Like this. This is a nice setup for people to practice. Make sense? In dolphin. Yeah, okay, sorry. Who did you say again?
Jessica P.
Jessica P, okay. All right, so we have another dolphin.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask a quick question about this pose and the other poses we're looking at today. I noticed that in the contradictions it says risk of stroke, risk of seizure. But I'm epileptic, and I was wondering, where does that go with people who have epilepsy? Would we be best off avoiding those poses, or?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, again, for you and your personal practice, if it feels good for you, but as a teacher, if someone tells you I have epilepsy, I'd be like, we're not going to do headstand, right?
Right. Okie doke. Right. Anyway, Jessica B. Yeah, it's hard to tell from the photo, but it looks as though her legs aren't fully engaged. Obviously, you need to keep a micro bend, which she has got, but it doesn't look like she's pushing much through the heel. And I'd sort of give her a cue to kind of press back through the heel if that was available to her. And maybe scoot your legs in a little bit to kind of give her more of a vertical sort of back.
Yeah, so she could tiptoe her legs in, and just like Allie, she could bend the knees deeply. And again, with dolphin, it's like, remember, it's like a play. So you're telling people to play. Tiptoe your feet in, bend the knees deeply, send your sitting bones to the sky. Tiptoe your feet in more, right? Bend your knees deeply, send your sitting bones, because she's really on her way to being able to do, like for her, she's past the stage of just holding it in down dog. I think she's almost at the stage where she's soon ready to come into the upside down fetal position. What do you guys think? Looking in the chat. Do we feel good about her elbows?
Maybe scooch the elbows in a little bit, but her upper body looks quite all right, to be honest, like her elbows and her shoulders.
I agree. They could come in like a teeny bit, but honestly, really, really great. Like when I see people with it flared wide, it's it's usually very extreme. Another thing that she's doing really well that I want to point out, which is the other point I wanted to make sure we covered before leaving headstand land, is that it looks like she's really on the crown of her head, right? So remember we were talking about that like top fontanelle when we were talking about the 3 diaphragms in the body. We really want people to be on the top fontanelle, the top of their head, when they come into headstand. And most people are not going to do that for you unless you really call it out. They're going to do headstand kind of at the top of the head, like, like where their hairline meets their forehead, or they're kind of going to do it here. And I mean, I'm not sure, but I think even if we look at Lauren's photo again, this is like getting super nitpicky, but I know Lauren's going to appreciate it. Where did she go? No, she looks like she's on the crown of her head, but we can see now her elbows splayed wide, right? So also should be able to knit the ribs together more effectively if she had the elbows directly under the shoulders, or like in a less wide V shape. Let me see if I can find someone. Here's a nice example of the dolphin looking like dog, and the other hand variation that we were saying Allie could explore. Let me just see if I can find someone. So Tessa, are you kicking? Concerned. I don't know if we have a good photo of someone on the crown of the head. But just look out for that. Know that it's, and here's an awesome photo of she's ready to come into the fetal position, right? And then with her strength, she's gonna press her legs up from fetal position. So I'm not finding a super clear photo of it, but just be aware that people are gonna plant this on the ground instead of this unless you really cue them, right? So say, dip your chin into the chest when they're coming into it. Because when they're doing this, it feels like this feels kind of like the top of the head, but it's not. This is the top of my head, right? So it's really this drastic chin into chest action. Make sense? Clear? Why? And let's go over what would be the risk if we were using this part of the head instead of the very top. Yeah, the neck once again, right? The cervical spine is going to be hugely compromised. But let's go over last thing before we move on. Headstand, just sort of like shoulder stand, we're going to see it's kind of like named the wrong thing, because in an ideal world, not that much weight is on your head. Where's all the weight in this posture? Forearms, right? So the ideal, and I'm not at this level, but the ideal would be you come up into headstand, and then once you're in headstand, you can even press, if you have that anatomy even available to you, which Kristen talked about at the beginning, but look at me, I do, right? So that once I'm in headstand, instead of my head being on the ground like this, the floor is here, I would press into my forearms so much that there'd be like no pressure on my head. Okay, basically impossible, but that's the sensation we're going for, right? So it really should be called like forearm stands, a different pose, but you guys get what I'm saying? So we don't want weight on the head, because remember those cervical vertebrae that Kristen showed us? How like little and fragile and delicate they were. Like, we're turning the whole body upside down compared to the lumbar vertebra. Cervical vertebrae are not designed to hold our body weight. So we've got to encourage people to really get their weight on the forearms. And if someone's elbows are like this, guess what? Just kind of like the test we did, the weight is not in the forearms. Okay. What about those crazy people balancing just on their head? I think they're crazy. Not something that I would aspire to. Okay, I was just looking, just want to make sure. Yeah. So again, kind of like a lot of Kristen's material, it's like, so Jamie says, what about tripod headstand? Is that an okay training pose? Again, each of you have to make your own decisions and teach from your direct personal practice. And I think Tessa or someone asked a really good question earlier that wasn't my intention to skip. She said, should we teach headstand if we don't practice it ourselves? What do you guys think the answer to that question is? No. Yeah, remember back to our very first lecture or the very first slideshow, right? It's like we only teach from direct experience. So you know, that's fine. If you don't have a great direct experience with headstand, you're just not going to teach headstand. You probably have a direct experience with dolphin that you enjoy, and you could teach that instead, right? And people in your class who know how to do headstand, they'll just come up into it anyway, right? Without you having to even cue anything. So remember, when we come back to, this is why it's really important, remember that homework question about like, what does yoga asana mean to you? So important, because once you're really clear on that, it's like, if headstand isn't a part of that, who cares, right? That's maybe not why you choose to teach or why you choose to come to the mat. So yeah, you can just do headstand prep, and there's a million other inversions that you can do. And Amber, did you have a tip you wanted to share with us? Oh, okay, tell us.
The tip I wanted to share was just when you set up for your base and headstand, I always just take my measurement of my elbows. Don't move my elbows, open up, and then you're not wider, and then you just leave them exactly where you are.
Oh, love that. Yes, so good. Great reminder. Thank you. So you can teach that with your teacher class app. Really good one. Yeah, I feel like I used to do that in the past, and then somehow I stopped. I'm really glad you reminded me of that. Okay, so headstand is, there's a lot we can talk about. Let's talk about Halasana plow pose before we talk about shoulder stand. And shoulder stand is another one that I feel like we should, for ourselves, rename. And so when we talk about shoulder stand and plow pose, remember when we talked about bridge and how in bridge we want to do the origami of the shoulder shimmy, right? So right shoulder is going to come in. We're going to move all our weight there. Left shoulder is going to come in, right? We're going to shimmy the shoulder blades together. So even if you're not teaching a full-on bridge pose before you come into plow or shoulder stand, I would still encourage you to teach that little shuffle for people. Yeah? So just lift the hips up. You know, you can just say, lift the hips up, interlace your hands behind your back, shimmy your shoulder blades together on your back, always as a first kind of step. And you can also, if you're doing plow, you can have them take the legs overhead first and then have them do that, because they'll even be able to find more space to do it once the legs are overhead. So let's see what this looks like as we look at some folks. So I'm going to, well, Chloe's here, so let's just use her. Did she do the shoulder shimmy, yes or no? What do we think? I want to hear in the chat. Okay, I'm getting some chats. Yes, she did, right? Woohoo! Could she do it maybe even more? Maybe a tiny bit, but it looks pretty darn good. So her next step is going to be to press the heels of her hands together. Okay, let's look at someone else. Let's just look at Jessica P again. Sorry, Jessica P, we're using you a lot today. Okay, do we think she did the shoulder shimmy, yes or no? No, yeah, I think maybe she did a little bit. It's like medium, right? It's like medium. It's like not so much, right? So you guys are hopefully getting a sense. Okay, here, let's look at Muriel. She's here, so she won't mind. Did she do the shoulder shimmy, yes or no? So I'd say Jessica is like in between, right? We're kind of not sure, kind of no. Muriel, like definitely no, right? And what's a telltale sign that she didn't? I mean, this isn't a hard and fast rule because people have different range of motion in the shoulders. But one thing is, like, her shoulders are pretty flared wide. Yeah, her elbows are splayed out. So again, that could just be anatomy. We don't know. But I think it's a sign that, yeah, maybe she didn't shimmy as much as she potentially could. Let's talk for a second, because Muriel, we're just going to stay with you if you don't mind. So I love that she put a bolster behind her. That's really awesome because it allows her feet to land on something. So you could have like a chair or a coffee table, or you could tell students, yeah, and Andrea says she can't shimmy too much because of shoulder injuries, right? So, you know, keep that in mind. Hopefully your students will tell you at the beginning of class when you ask for injuries, which we're going to talk more about later, that if they have an injury. But for the majority population, I'd say cue it, right? And you can always say, you know, if you have a shoulder injury or you're not able to, you know, just do the best you can. If someone has a shoulder injury, is this a great pose for them? Maybe not so much, right? Maybe there's some other things that would want to do instead, if it were private or whatever. But let's talk for a second about, for both Halasana and Sarvangasana, what part of the spine is at risk? What part of the spine are we most worried about? Like as parents who worry about all the sections of the spine, as yoga teachers, the parts of the spine are like our little children. Yeah, so our child, the cervical spine, we're very, very worried about, right? We're worried about it getting flattened and compressed. So the shoulder shimmy helps with that. If someone can't do the shoulder shimmy, like maybe like Andrea, or maybe we just want to protect the cervical spine even more, what we can do is use props. We can use padding. And Muriel has this, I think it's like a blanket or a cushion, but is she using the prop in a way that's helping her cervical spine or helping protect it? Yes or no? No, right? So, I mean, it's great that she has padding, but it's not doing what we really want. So what we'd want, and this is in the manual, so you can check it out, but would want her shoulders to be elevated higher than her head. So if you think of the cervical curve like this, that it's like her head can drop back onto something. So what she'd want to do is she'd want to take the edge of this blue blanket and put it right under her shoulders. And maybe she'd even want to, it's really too small. She really needs a bigger blanket. But another thing you can do if you don't have blankets or you don't have anything is you can fold over the mat, right? So you can have people fold over the mat, ideally put a blanket between and fold it over. And then their head would be on the wood, like on the wood floor, and the shoulders would be on the support. So the shoulders are like 2 inches higher than the head. Can everyone visualize that? It's also in the manual so you can very clearly see it. Make sense? So the first step when we're teaching plow or shoulder stand, before we even talk about the shoulder shimmy or do anything, would be what? Figure out the prop situation, right? So tell everyone to fold the mat, show them how to fold the blanket and put the blanket down and then fold the mat on top of it. This would be a great one for you to demo at the front of the room, right? Or to use a demo student, like set someone up and have everyone look at you. And then once they're on the support, so their shoulders are elevated above their head, you can cue them to kick the legs over if you're going to do plow first, and then interlace the hands, do that shoulder shimmy. And then sort of like you emerge from, you know, in headstand, you're in the child's pose position, the upside down child's pose position, sorry, like this. And then the legs emerge. You can do the same thing with plow. People come into plow. They have a really nice firm grip on their low back, and then they can take the legs up. Where is the majority of the weight in our shoulder stand? Think about it. Where is the majority of our weight in our shoulder stand? Head, shoulders, forearms, shoulders, arms, forearms, shoulder blades. So I'm going to say forearms, not just forearms, but your elbows. Your elbows. Yeah, there's a little bit of weight on your shoulder blades, but ideally you want most of the weight on your elbows, because the biggest thing we're going to see, let's look at some shoulder stands now in a minute, is that the legs are drifting back towards the face. The more you send the legs away from your face so that the legs are really over your elbows, it's like your hands are catching your seat, which is super heavy, and you're going to feel the majority of the weight in the elbows. So it's forearms, but I like to say elbows because that's even more precise, because it's going to help them shift the weight forward. When we shift the weight forward, guess what? Cervical spine is less in danger, right? Because we've just taken the weight off this sensitive area and taken it more into the hands and forearms, which are supporting us. Okay, I'm sure I'm losing some of you. So let's look at this so we can make it really practical. Okay, so let's go back. Student teachers, do you want to look at someone in shoulder stand? Either of you, one of you maybe can unmute.
I chose a couple.
Okay.
Tessa W.
Okay, cool. Tessa, who I think is also here with us. Okay. So Tessa's in your class and you're looking at her, and what do you see?
First, she's happy, which is really nice. She's got a big smile on her face. But I would say she needs to bring the shoulders under the back more and put more strength in the arms, the elbows, and breathe deeply and see if she can bring her legs a little bit straighter after she shimmies her shoulders under.
Yeah, and Stephanie just asked a great question. She said, when you say forward, which way do you mean? I mean this the way. Forward, right? Because I'm assuming this is the top of the mat. But again, that wasn't clear cueing on my part, so shame on me. So the thing you should say to your students is away from your face, right? Because away from your face means forward. So yeah, first of all, would want ideally this mat folded over, because we can see even if you do a really great shoulder shimmy, the shoulder shimmy helps protect the neck a little bit, but nothing is as great as the prop. Okay, and then it looks like she missed the shoulder shimmy, or ideally we want her to do it a little bit more in her plow, right? Because once you're in shoulder stand, it's not really a super safe place to shimmy, because you're just kind of balancing and it would put a lot of pressure potentially on the neck. So come back into plow. Can she shimmy her shoulders together? Can she get her elbows more like our headstand elbows, right? So it's like we're seeing, even though they're very different poses, it's like some of the common misalignments and component parts of these are the same, right? We need those elbows close together. In headstand, it's like this, but in shoulder stand, it's here. And then the hands are supporting the booty. And then when you tell people to send the feet away from their face, it's cool because all of a sudden the weight of their booty drops into their hands and they start to feel that they're really, the strength in the pose is really in their forearms, or where the weight in the pose is, is really in their, not forearms, upper arms and elbows. You guys with me? Kind of, yes, no? Let's look at another one. Chloe or Amber, is there someone else you wanted to look at?
Yeah, I've got W.
Who W?
Christina, I think. Is that right?
With a C?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and I've just put, if she was my student, I'd encourage her to kind of scooch her shoulders down the back a tad, and then that'll be less compression in the cervical spine. And also, if she wished to deepen the pose, then I'd try and suggest she move her legs kind of away from the body and straighten them out a little bit.
Yeah, away from the face, right? Because we want her legs here. So she just needs to send her legs forward, which would send the weight down into her elbows and upper arms. And again, would want a prop for her. And to push up through the heels, sure. Yeah, her feet are pointed. So if people are pointed or flexed, I'm usually pretty happy. They can choose, or Barbie foot, right? Flointed. So as long as there's energy in the feet, I'm pretty good. Cool. So do we have questions about any of these poses? Again, you're going to make all your own decisions, but I don't like teaching shoulder stand if I don't have props, like if I don't have a blanket or everyone doesn't have a blanket, because I think the cervical spine compression risk is just too high. What do we think about this one here? Just looking at Kelly W for a moment. Do we feel like the weight is in her shoulders and neck? Or do we feel like the weight is in the upper arms and the elbows? What do you guys think? Upper arms and elbows, right? Her neck looks great. Again, it would, even for her, I'd love a prop, right? Because then it would be like extra 1,000% sure that her cervical spine is protected. But you can see that the weight of her body is really here. And it's all because she has the hands really, she's really letting her hands support her booty. And then she really has that heel and hips in one line. She could even take the feet away from her face like another inch. Yeah, and Jennifer says she'll post a pic in the group of the blanket stack. That would be awesome. And I think there's one in the manual, or at least there should be. So make sure to check out the manual page as well. Okay, let's do our closing meditation. And then videos to come on these poses. If you have questions stirring in your head, throw them in the chat. And then after the closing meditation, before we do jettas, I can make sure to answer them. Chloe, kind of unrelated. Is there any other poses I should avoid in my personal practice, or if I have an epileptic student other than the inversions mentioned? It's hard to make generalizations, but I would say be sensitive with inversions, and then maybe be sensitive with anything else that just constricts or restricts oxygen. So remember when we talked about pranayama and breath retention, like holding the breath a little bit can be very soothing for some folks. Like if I knew someone was epileptic, just sort of like if I knew someone was pregnant, would sort of nix that. And then I think of, again, twists that are really, because if you twist, you can't take in as much air. So that might be something to be mindful of, like maybe not a lot of extreme twists. But again, I mean, I have a really close friend who's epileptic, and she's like better at yoga than me in terms of better, in terms like her asana practice is amazing. She used to be a gymnast. So it's like everyone is so different. But those are just like kind of the key things I would keep in mind. Some other questions before the closing meditation. Rachel says, for shoulder stand, we were taught to try and get the hands down the back as far as possible. Or is this just an Iyengar instruction, or does it improve the action of the arms? Oh, great question. So what she's saying is, we were taught, she's saying that like, instead of the hands supporting the booty, they were taught to try to get the hands higher on the back. This is what you mean, right, Rachel? I like the booty supporting the hands because I like the cervical spine to be protected. And that's what I feel is like the safest alignment. Iyengar can do crazy stuff. Light on yoga, if you look at it, he's like so extreme in some of these poses. So if you're doing it on lots of blankets, sure. But it's not like a cue that I teach to a general population, because I just want to focus on like, it's almost, you think of yourself as like a firefighter, right? Or like, where's the biggest risk? The biggest risk of injury in this situation is the neck. So I just want to get pressure off the neck. That doesn't mean that if you're a super advanced student and you want to come into the deepest variation as Iyengar has photographed it, that you couldn't necessarily walk the hands down, especially if you were on blankets. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that if I were teaching a group class, that's not how I'd approach the cueing. Is that helpful? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Closing meditation. So we have Amber. Hello.
Okay, so hello yogis, and thanks for the lovely class today. I'd invite everybody to find a nice tall seat, nice comfortable tall seat. Close your eyes, starting to bring the awareness inside. Starting to breathe with awareness. Have your right hand on the belly, and then let's inhale, push your belly into your hand with a deep full inhale, breathe in. Filling up, and exhale slowly. On the next inhale, breathe in deeply, filling up your belly, filling up your ribs, filling up your upper chest. And exhale slowly with control. Continuing your deep breathing, starting to focus your mind. Bringing your focus to one single point. Choose either the point directly in between your eyebrows, or choose the point directly in the middle of your chest. On your next inhale, breathe into that space. Inhale long. And exhale, slowly with control. Continue your deep breathing. Focusing your mind, inhaling into that space. Exhale. On your next inhale, bring the energy from the base of your spine, bringing it all the way up your spine into your brain, flooding your brain with your new energy, and exhale slowly. One more time, breathe in deeply. Bring the energy from the base of your spine all the way up to your brain, flooding your brain with new energy, and slowly exhaling with control. Slowing down your breathing. Mentally, repeat after me. May I be filled with love and kindness. May I be well. May I move through this life with ease. May I be happy. May I be healthy and free of suffering. May I be free. I'd like to close this meditation with 3 ohms. If you'd like to ohm, please inhale to chant. Breathe in. Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, Deep, Deep, Deep. Om Tat Sat. Thank you very much, yogis, and have a lovely, wonderful day.
Thanks, Amber. That was so nice. It was so nice to own. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So if this is not your regular call time or you can't stay for jettas, this is the moment to drop off. Otherwise, what we're going to do for jettas is we're going to do pairs. And in the syllabus, it says that we're going to practice, teach Sarvangasana to one another. But I want to make it even more interesting because I know you guys are ready for it. So what you want to do right now is kind of look at your space and see how you can set up your space so that one person can be a demo student, or so you have space to practice, right? So ideally your partner can teach you and then you can teach your partner. And then let me just see if I have my yoga mat here or not. Yeah, I do. Okay. So, and write this down. So what you're going to do is you're going to teach a full, complete breath to your student. So the student will be in seated cross legs. So you're going to have them start in seated cross legs. And you're going to teach them a full, complete breath. Okay. After a full, complete breath, Apajapa, right? Or sorry, Apajapa would be observing the breath. So teach a full, complete breath, but you could add in some Apajapa if you wanted to, right? Like noticing the quality of the breath, that kind of thing. So full, complete breath. You're going to teach them cat-cow. So then you're going to say, inhale, come on forward to all fours. Inhale, take your shoulders back, collarbones broaden. Cow, exhale, tailbone, lengthen the space between your knees. Round the low back, drop the chin, lots of different things you can practice saying. And it's hard. And you as the student, when you're being taught this, you're going to take mental notes for your partner and you're going to be like, oh, they're just saying the same thing over and over, or their inhale and exhale, it's way too long, right? So you're not zoning out, right? You're thinking about what feedback can you give your partner to potentially improve. So you're going to do cat-cow, and then you're going to have them come lie down on their back, and you're going to teach them shoulder stand. Now, think through that you don't know your partner that well when you get matched up right now. So your partner may not want to do shoulder stands. You're going to want to make sure that you teach in a way that accommodates for what they might be going through. So what I would suggest is that you say something like, option 1, lie down on your back and take your legs up to the sky for Viparita Karani. This is a mild inversion. If you're near a wall, you can move near a wall. Option 2, let's come into shoulder stand. And then for that, right, you'd need to take them into plow pose first. Or actually, first, you need to set up their props, right? So if you're going to choose to come into shoulder stand, fold over your mat, nestle your shoulders. Make sure your shoulders are on the mat and your head is on the wood, right? Kick your legs overhead, interlace the hands underneath you, shimmy the shoulder blades together, right? And then you're going to teach plow and then shoulder stand. And I see people dropping off the call in fear. but you guys want to practice this because it's actually really, really hard, right? That's a lot to remember. So let's go over it again. Full complete breath, potential to add Appa Japa. Roll forward to all fours. You're just going to teach a cat, cow, cat, cow, cat, cow, because you really want to get feedback on how you teach cat, cow, because that's crucial. You're going to teach it all the time. Lie down on your back, option 1. So you're giving them an option to opt out of shoulder stand. And then you'll walk them through the prop setup, plow, shoulders, coming into shoulder stand, and then coming out. Okay? And then you'll switch partners. And then after, you're going to give your partner lots of helpful feedback. Like, hey, I really loved how you cued this, but the breathing for, XYZ was too slow or too fast or whatnot. Okay? All right. And then we'll answer questions at the end. And if you can stay, because this is a really good opportunity to get feedback. It's really, really vital to get feedback when you're teaching. And sometimes people in your life, like your significant other, like they can't give you as intelligent feedback as someone who's here and been through this whole training. Okay. So give me just a second. So we'll do Q&A at the end. TAs, if you're not staying, can you drop off unless you're volunteering to do this with someone? Jen or Stephanie, can you be someone's partner? Yes or no? If one of you could say, it would be great. If not, that's also fine. Jen says she can stay. Okay, so Stephanie, you hop off. Jen, I'm going to put in 2, and we should be good. All right. Hello. Welcome back. Everyone's going to be back in just a second. How'd it go for you guys, Stephanie and Katrin? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs sideways. All right. Do we have everyone? All right, welcome back. So how did that go for folks? And first of all, I'm curious, does anyone want to unmute and share? Was that easier or harder than what you were expecting it to be, to actually practice it out loud and say it to someone else?
It was hard. I did my Kriya before this.
Yeah, so Amanda said hard. Anyone else? Gabriella says so hard. Well, so guys, you should be very proud of yourselves because a lot of other people dropped off in fear and you actually stayed on, or because of logistics. But if you were not able to stay and you're watching the replay, because I've now recorded again, make the time to do this with a friend or family member, right? It's way easier to just do it on the live call with someone who is like going through everything with you. Any questions that came up in your guys' groups that you want to tackle before we part ways? Yeah, it's so much harder than it seems. Jennifer said hard because she did her Kriya before this. Okay, so no one had any specific questions about how to cue something or anything. Oh, okay, I see one. Gabriella, you want to unmute? I unmuted you.
Yeah. I have a question. Because I worry about not remembering things. That's one of my biggest sort of fears. Do you have, except for just like writing it down and practice, do you have any little tips or what could be easy to remember and such?
Yeah, so I would say out loud and review the cues that are in the manual. Because like worst case, you can just kind of parrot what me or a different teacher that you like says. That's really like, I think the best way to get started is just to parrot a little bit. But at the same time, if you just look at who's in front of you and just sort of like forget everything else, that's why we focus so much on body reading in this course. Because if you can just look at the person in front of you, Like the memorizing cues is helpful for like things like lengthen the back of the neck, dip the chin, right? Like things like that, like things that cue the front and the back of the body, or that are just very effective and clear to say. But the best thing to do is to look at your student, because if you look at them and you can talk spatially, you can usually help them in some way or another, right? But it is really hard. That's why it's so important to practice. And moving forward, we're going to do more and more practice teaching on the live calls like this. So really good job for you guys for being brave. And it really is practice. Those of you who practice teach are going to be throughout the course, are going to be in a totally different place from those of you who punted and didn't by the time we get to the end and by the time you film your practicum. So kudos to you guys. Great job. And we'll keep doing more of this. Oh, did you have a question, Amanda? Okay, you're up. Whoop.
Oh, yeah. So do you recommend, I actually have been talking through as I do my home practice to kind of get me used to saying the cues as I'm doing my home practice. Okay.
Highly recommend doing that.
Awesome.
It's super effective. And talk out loud. Don't just think it, say it. That's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that with the group.
Right.
Talk your own home practice as if you were talking someone through what you were doing. And Gabriella says, I've recorded your practice, even better. Record it and then play it back. And you can kind of find what your filler words are, right? Because we all have those filler words that we say, you know, like or now we're gonna do X, right? And you want to start everything with active verbs. So yeah, recording yourself is awesome. Part of me wants to like build that into the coursework. Maybe I will. I always get feedback from you guys, and we'll build more and more of that in. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. Any other questions? Put in the Facebook group. Any tips that came up, share with your fellow classmates, and good job, you guys. Thanks for being here. See you soon. Bye. Yes.
One quick one. Sorry, I was doing the yoga for strength video of yours, and I was just thinking, bloody hell, if I was teaching this, I don't know if I could talk. Because when you're engaged in the abs, obviously it's very hard to talk. And I just wondered, you know, what your tip is of because I always admire that, you know, because you're doing it on YouTube, you have to do the whole class. Whereas a lot of the time, teachers don't do the whole class. So how do you maintain, you know, doing the whole thing and talking?
It's so hard. It's so hard. Yeah, that's my answer. And as I age, I'm switching to voiceover. Because it's so challenging. But you know, you don't have to worry about that, because if you're going to teach in a classroom, you wouldn't demo the whole time like I was doing. In fact, you know, watch the in studio positioning slideshow. Like I would actually say it would be very not good if you were demoing the whole time, because in a studio class, you just demo at key moments and then walk around the room. That's how I teach when I'm with people in real life. It's just because of YouTube that has to happen, and it's not advisable. It really is so hard. Yeah. Good. So I'm not a superwoman. Like I'm dying after I film classes like that, because it's so hard to do the poses really, really well and be talking the whole time. Yeah. So not recommended. Okay. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Great work. Bye. Thanks for staying, Jen.
You're welcome.